She slapped me so hard, my eyes welled up with tears. The sting rattled my left cheek while a deep red hand imprint made its mark. All day I had to wear this injury in front of the entire school. It didn't start to fade until at least 5th period. This wasn't as bad as when she took a lighter to the top of my hand. To this day, I still have the scar. We would do stupid stuff like that, make ourselves pass out, sniff markers until we got a buzz, have a slap battle. It was just something we did. Our little crew always did these kinds of things. I think at the start it made us feel connected to each other, like being in a gang. Us against them. And there were scores of them. We always had some absurd reason for these acts of self-torture, none of which made any sense whatsoever. We began to get more and more creative with what we would do next, which, by the way, would need to be even more intense than the previous. It wasn't uncommon for any one of us to have some kind of battle wound on any given school day. There were 4 of us in our crew, but I'm going to talk about Mindy, the only girl. Mindy was tough, and when I mean tough, I don't mean for a girl tough. I mean tough, plain and simple. I once saw her kick a guy's balls so hard he cried like a baby. It was Mindy that I had received that punishing slap from, that final stage of the slap-off. And I won't lie, her blow brought me to tears. Aside from holding the title of slap battle champion, she and I were good friends. Looking back, I think she had feelings towards me. However, this wasn't mutual. Maybe that's why she smashed my face as hard as she did that day. But we still remained close through middle school until she left us just before high school. And I don't mean that she moved away. Let me explain. Once we began 8th grade, our escapades became legendary. We gained a reputation of sorts for being stupid. It had got to the point where kids would come up and suggest different stunts we should do next, some of which we did. Others we scoffed at. Keep in mind these were things well beyond the scope of jumping over trash cans with our bikes or smashing mailboxes. We had graduated to more serious endeavors, like glue every window shut in the entire school, or start a grease fire inside the cafeteria. We soon gained respect from even the bad crowd. Everything we did was on the down low at school. No one ever ratted us out or even hinted at knowing who it was that wreaked the havoc. I think it's because what we did represented some kind of message, like an assault on authority. We developed an underground popularity that made us fearless and have big egos, especially Mindy. And she wasted no time indulging in her newfound fame, getting into fights almost every single day with both girls and boys. It wouldn't be a normal day at school unless Mindy launched into some kind of altercation. She had become the top badass. Everyone knew her, even at other schools, and she loved every minute of it. I suppose this was how we picked her out. The new kid Alex went unnoticed once he began attending the school at the start of 2nd semester. I remember him start to show up in my homeroom, but only in passing. He was the dirty kid with his clothes old and disheveled. His hair was unkempt with a distinct lack of any style whatsoever. I felt bad for this kid, but he was an asshole. A real nasty runt that seemed skilled at getting under one's skin. It was easy to not feel sorry for him, and there was a part of me that wanted to. I just couldn't. Alex approached us one day at our secret spot. We had a hidden grotto deep behind the park that we claimed as our unofficial hangout. To see this kid here only meant one thing, that he had been following us. It was the kind of place that you had to know how to get to it and wasn't somewhere you'd just stumble on. The silver-tongued Alex had wasted no time. He launched into a vicious recap of our anarchistic activities, debasing them and berating us in the process. We had no comeback. It was as if the zookeeper had come to tame the monkeys. I remember having all that ego ripped from my soul and made me feel like the dumb kid that I was, that we all were. Alex spoke well beyond his years as he dismantled almost everything we ever did. the reasons why we felt the need for attention, the paths we would take into adulthood, giving us each customized details. For me, it was taking some steps away only to end up right back in our sleepy little town, a lonely old man, telling stories that no one believes. For Mindy, it was much more dire. You'll just wither up and die. His tone was both dark and joyous. You'd think the four of us would have just pounced this boy, but we didn't. We all stood there, angry and embarrassed. There was some truth to what he was saying that kept us at bay. Words. The deadliest of weapons. It seemed to me his focus was on Mindy. I couldn't tell you why for certain. He kept his eye on her while keeping on with his nasty monologues, and it was here that he challenged Mindy to a most curious duel. A staring contest. You wouldn't last even 1 minute. His vile, tiny voice spewed out. This was something Mindy couldn't pass up. It was different than just punching him in his stupid mouth, which I was sure she would have done instead. This was a challenge to something much deeper for her. Maybe for once she wanted to prove her strength beyond the physical rough-ups she'd been known for. It was a challenge Alex knew she couldn't pass up. And he was right. But the contest wasn't with Alex. It was to be with his little sister, which I think added more insult to injury. Mindy, of course, accepted. On the way to Alex's house, I pled with Mindy to just let it go. Something deep in my gut was telling me this was a bad idea. Don't be such a wuss. Her answer to my pleads hit me right in the gut. My concern, I recall, was not because of what we were about to do, but more of where we were going. We followed Alex to the outskirts of town, then down the old road, which led deeper into the dense country that surrounded our town. We've never ventured out this far by ourselves, and for good reason. The stories we'd heard kept our main base of operations always within our town. Tales of crazy people, wild animals, ghosts even. These parts were only seen when driving to the big city with our parents. But there we were, marching deeper into the infamous dark hills. Alex's house was buried deep within the decayed black walnuts and decomposed oaks. There was no real road that led to his house and was even devoid of a driveway once we arrived. It was a yard of dirt and gravel right up to the rotten wood slats of the front porch. By now we had lost our two other companions who had wised up and turned back. I don't know why I stayed with her. She was tough enough to do this alone. Tougher than I was. Maybe because she called me a wuss. Alex led us into his house, where a strong odor of stew hit my nose. It was an aroma I'd never smelled before, and certainly not from my own kitchen at home. One of poverty, maybe even below it. This didn't seem to faze Mindy at all, but it gave me intense anxiety. We shouldn't be here, I thought, for a childish schoolyard staring contest. But there we were. The inside was just as run down as the exterior, however neat and tidy. The furniture looked as if handed down through generations. It was like going back in time with the only indication of modernisms within the television that sat in the corner against the lamp's dulled lighting. The other missing aspect of the house were people. It seemed empty despite something cooking in the kitchen and the television on. Alex led us through the house towards a back bedroom. He opened the door where a little girl played in the corner. Tessa. Alex called her name. She stopped to look at him. Her shoulder-length matted hair complemented her tattered dress. Tessa couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. I remembered her to have pale skin that made her deep blue eyes protrude from their sockets. Alex led her over to a chair where she climbed in to sit, as if she already knew what was about to happen. Alex pulled up a chair for Mindy. The two were now squared off in front of each other, I heard Alex whisper soft words into Tessa's ear that sounded like a foreign language. It was English, but with a guttural twang, if you will. "First one to blink loses," Alex spoke with a demented excitement. They sat there for almost an hour staring at each other. Alex was fixated, a devil's grin painted across his face. Mindy shifted in her chair as time inched on. Tessa sat there without emotion, lifeless even. Within Mindy's movements, I sensed she was in pain, trapped. I didn't know what to do as I didn't know what was happening. I just felt a thick uneasiness fill the room as Mindy squirmed and writhed in her chair, staring into Tessa's now darkened blue eyes. There was something familiar about them, the way they settled onto her small face. I realized now, she was blind. Shadows caught my attention from the dirty window where I heard movement outside. I looked over and saw a pair of eyes peeking in from behind the grime and soot. Someone was watching us. I'd had enough. It was time to get us out of there. I reached over to grab Mindy when she collapsed to the floor. I gathered her up into my arms. Alex stood over us, laughing like a maniac. "You lose," he said, pointing his pale finger at Mindy, limp in my arms. I pulled her up to her feet. I could tell right away she was different. I looked over at Tessa, still sitting in the chair, calm and blank. With Mindy under my arm, I pulled us through the house and back outside. Once there, I shook Mindy's shoulders for a response. She looked back at me with a blankness that shook me right to my core. A long stretch of drool fell from her mouth. The Mindy I knew before was gone. I muscled us back through the hills as the evening sunlight disappeared above the tree line. All the while I heard footsteps crunch into the dead twigs and fallen leaves close behind. I heard whispers of foreign languages taunt us as I struggled us back to our hideout. It was night by the time we arrived. Mindy seemed to come back, but she was not herself. She was there enough to hold onto my waist as I rode us back home on my bike. I left her as she dazed toward her front steps. The next day, Mindy wasn't at school, and neither was Alex. I had a sick feeling in my stomach that I was about to find out something terrible. None of the other guys believed a word I said about what had happened the day before. They were convinced Mindy and I were playing some kind of joke, and she was at home like a big faker. I wished that were the case. After school that day, we found out Mindy had been admitted to the hospital for severe pneumonia. A week later, she slipped into a coma. Alex never returned to school. When asked why, no one at the school had an answer or seemed to care. He was just gone. In the months that followed, I did my best to convince everyone what had happened to us. The story would always fall on deaf ears. It was to the point where my own parents punished me for disparaging the sudden illness that Mindy had succumbed to by telling my tale. It was dismissed as disrespectful every time. Over the years, I'd hear stories about the elusive gypsy people that inhabited the hills beyond our town. Stories of cannibalism, incest, witchcraft, you name it. I spoke with a woman who claimed that a young man had come out from the dark hills and told her in detail about everything that would happen in her life, even the day she'd die. I wondered if one day there would be my story about a soul-stealing blind girl in the staring contest. Sounds crazy, right? I always thought so too. The town hasn't changed much over the years. A few more houses have been built. They put in a Walmart. The dark hills have made way to a few more roads, but they still surround us, ominous and fierce. It's been almost 35 years since I dropped Mindy off that night. Not a week goes by that I don't pay her a visit. Every time, as I watch her lay there, trapped in her coma, I wonder if she's still waiting to die. I can still feel the sting of her slap, as if it were yesterday. As for me, I've never been able to leave our fair town. There have been times when I managed to make it to the big city, but this would always be short-lived and fall apart. I'd find myself coming right back to where I started and telling this story that nobody believes. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's narration. I want to give a huge thanks to last month's $5 and up patrons: Meg C, Ian M, Cassandra, Red, Joseph M, Lake S, Ronnie K, Letty M, Hunter D, Greg S, Christopher B, TJ W, and all the other $5 and up and $2 patrons on screen as well. All of your support makes these narrations possible, and I appreciate it a ton. If you'd like to join these lovely ghouls, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get an exclusive narration that will never, ever be uploaded to my channel. Usually, one a bit too extreme for YouTube. So that's at least one extra video every month for just $1, if not more. For $2 a month, you'll get thanked in the end scroll of every video, and for just $5 a month, I'll shout you out at the end of multiple videos a month personally. You also get exclusive Discord roles for those perks as well. If you'd like to chat with me for a bit, you can join me on a monthly live stream for just $10 a month and get a signed merch sticker for $25 a month. And if you're in the market for some horrifying shirts and hoodies, you can head on over to my Teespring store in the description as well. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at SecondClancy. I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.